All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video streaming on our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning producing today's show. We are back. Sixers get lambasted today by the Washington Wizards down there in D.C. Sixers kind of sleepwalk through that game. The only guy who seemed to be awake was Joel Embiid. The rest of the team, not so much. Rough game for the Sixers. They lose today. And it's funny, right before the game started today, I was just talking about how they look really good on Friday night. They look really good on Saturday. I thought it was kind of a statement win against the Heat. And then they go and throw up a clunker today against the Wizards. You heard it right here on 97.3 ESPN. The loss for the Sixers. It's a we're in January, so we're not really all that panicking about it. But the thing with that particular loss today did move the Sixers from the 5 seed down to the 6. They fall a half a game behind Cleveland, and you don't want to fall down into the 7th spot because then you're in that play-in situation. So right now the Sixers are just a notch up, a game and a half on Charlotte for the play-in spot. All right, let's reset the show. Let's get you back into the know. The Eagles lose yesterday. That's the big story, of course. We're going to talk about it. One thought every game. Casey Joyner right now in 21 minutes. We'll talk to him. Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports will join us in the 5 o'clock hour. From now till the top of the hour, me and you hanging out with reactions. 609-573-3776. If you want to get in on the phones, we had a lot of calls in the first portion of the show. We were on live today from noon to 2, and we opened up the phone lines, and a lot of you were reacting to the loss. I will say this about the loss, all right? The loss is frustrating because I thought they could be more competitive. I was wrong about that. Absolutely thought they could be more competitive. But we should not, all right, we should not overreact that the Eagles lost to the Buccaneers. What we should look at is what's next now. They won 4 games last year. They went from 4 to 9. They made the playoffs. You can't really ask for much more progression than that from the organization. This looked like at the end of last year, you get your head coach fired, you get your quarterback traded, you have a 4-win season. This looked like an organization that was going to be going through a long, suffering rebuild. It felt like the Eagles were about to go down the road of the New York Football Giants. The Giants have lost 10 or more games in 5 straight seasons. The way last season went, when you fire your coach, when you trade your quarterback, when you win 4 games, it felt like the Eagles were about to go down that road. Well, they quickly got out of that road and moved themselves into the right direction. You got to give them credit for that. Can you rip them for saying you didn't come to play yesterday? Absolutely. The observations on the game yesterday that stand out to me, there's no way around it. This was an embarrassing performance by the Eagles. They were outcoached and outclassed in all 3 phases of the game. Nick Sirianni, who I thought had a pretty good first season, he was very conservative in the game. He made very few adjustments, leading to just 17 yards in the first quarter, and they got shut out in the first half. But he wasn't alone. Jonathan Gannon was very passive. He allowed Buccaneers receivers to have a field day in front of his passive secondary yesterday. You add in Jalen Reagor's special teams muff punt, and the Eagles have a clear indication of why they're home for the rest of the playoffs. I thought the game, right from the jump, the Eagles win the toss, they defer, they take the ball in the second half, which most teams do. This isn't an indictment on how could you do that, but in this particular game, I thought it was key to maybe get the ball first and set the tone of the game. Set the style of the fight. The Eagles allowed the Buccaneers to set the style of the fight, and the Buccaneers took it right to you. They went right down the field and scored. So let's take a look at all the different things that happened in that game yesterday. Where did they disappoint? I would say 2 areas where they really disappointed. The run game. The run game was extremely disappointing. They could not win at the point of attack because I thought Todd Bowles had a really good game plan. He put 8 and 9 in the box, and he said, you are not going to run the ball on us. The Eagles, look, to their credit, they went in and said, we're going to try to fight fire with fire. You have a strength up front. We want to run the ball. And they did try to say, look, this is our strength. This is who we want to be. Unfortunately, they did not have the ability to keep that game close enough to stick with what they do well. Boston Scott had the one carry for 34 yards. It was a touchdown. Miles Sanders had 7 carries for 16 yards, just couldn't get anything going. Jordan Howard did not even have a carry in the game yesterday. For a team that was averaging about 185 yards a game over the second half of the season, unfortunately, they couldn't even get to 100 yards yesterday, and that's with Jalen Hurts leading the way with 39 yards. So the run game was a pretty big disappointment. Part of the disappointment was I thought Nick Sirianni lacked creativity in the run game. It was a run game that was really stagnant yesterday, and I really didn't think Sirianni did a good job. There was very little movement. There was very little creativity in the run game. Another area where I thought this team really struggled yesterday was passing the ball over the middle of the field has been an issue for Jalen Hurts the entire season. For whatever reason, he does not use the middle of the field all that much. I definitely thought they could have used Dallas Goedert more. Now, Goddard had 6 for 92, but at the end of the day, he could have had 10 for 115 or 10 for 140. I mean, they could have had Goddard had 12 targets in the game, so they did try to get him the ball, but it's where they were trying to get him the ball that I thought was the issue. Smith could have had a bigger game. I think if you look at Smith and the ability for him to get open yesterday and how they were defending him, they had options. Look, the Bucs were playing cover 3 all day long. That's what they do. They basically play cover 3 almost exclusively. They had an opportunity to let Smith be a playmaker, and I don't think they took full advantage of that opportunity. I don't think they took full advantage of maybe their best offensive weapon, which is Devontae Smith. So if I look at the offense and say, man, I thought the play design yesterday, I thought the play calling was very conservative. I thought the play design was conservative. I thought you take a look at the wide receivers could have been more involved in this game. I thought the Bucs were basically, and I think everybody could see this, they were basically begging the Eagles, to throw the ball, and the Eagles just could not do it. So that's a big question mark going forward. Do the Eagles, have the weapons at wide receiver? Obviously not. What comes first here, the chicken or the egg? Is it the wide receivers or is it the quarterback? Big question they need to find out. See what you guys think. 609-403-0973 on the text board, 609-403-0973 on the text board. And if you are watching the show live on the YouTube channel, you can message us over there. And if you're listening on the free mobile app, you can hit us up, message us through the free mobile app. The phone lines are open, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. I got a bunch of texts from earlier in the day. I'll get to some text messages rolling in right now as we're back. Mike, it's a rebuild, and we are a horrible team and need a lot of work. Front line is getting old. D-line is getting old. We have a Slay, Smith, and Goddard. We only beat bad teams. I would disagree with most of this text. I don't think the Eagles are in a rebuild and are not a horrible team. They have a very young left tackle. They have a rookie left guard. Jack Driscoll, who played right guard for most of the season, is in his second year. Isaac Seumalo, who played very well before he got hurt, is in about his 4th or 5th year. So they really have 4 pieces on the offensive line that are pretty young. The only guy who's aging on the offensive line, you got Kelsey and, of course, Lane Johnson. But I think the offensive line with Mailata, Dickerson, Driscoll, and Seumalo, I think you got 4 pretty strong pieces there. I think they do need another piece on the line. He says, we are a horrible team. If the Eagles are a horrible team, there are really bad teams in this league. To say they're horrible, I don't know what that says about some of these other teams. I don't know what it says about New Orleans and Denver and Atlanta, all those teams that are right around 500. The Eagles aren't horrible. They're just mediocre right now. And they're mediocre because they're very young in a lot of areas. Their wide receiver unit had a rookie and a second-year player and another second-year player. I mean, to go in with a rookie wide receiver and two second-year receivers, that's pretty gutsy. I mean, they had no veteran to speak of at wide receiver. Now, you could say that's a mistake on their part, and I could agree with that. I think they should have had a veteran wide receiver. But to say they're horrible, to win and make the playoffs with that wide receiving core, I think that says a lot. Need a lot of work on the front line. He says the offensive line, I think, is in decent shape. Mailata, the guys I just said. The defensive line, I can agree with you. They got to do something about Fletcher Cox. You can't go back and say he's our best guy up front. It's evident now that Cox is starting to get beaten up, slow down a little bit. So now it's time to get somebody in here to become the next Fletcher. Hargrave, I think, is a nice complimentary piece. He can't be your best guy. Josh Sweat is a nice player. They need to get a better player on the other side. Derek Barnett will be gone, so they got to upgrade that side. The fact that the Eagles say, people who say they only beat bad teams, it amazes me that people come up with that as they only beat bad teams. Dallas only beat bad teams. What if I say that to you? Dallas only beat bad teams. Right? I told you earlier in the day, Dallas has one win against a team with a winning record. Every other one of their wins was they beat New York twice, they beat Washington twice, they beat Philadelphia twice. The Eagles only beat bad. Now, you might say, well, Dallas is eliminated. Here's the difference. Nobody said when Dallas was 12-5 and in the playoffs, well, Dallas only beat bad teams. No, you thought Dallas was pretty good. But in reality, the best team they beat was the New England Patriots. And the New England Patriots just got beat by 40 in the playoffs. So it shows you that New England is pretty far off from being a good team. And at the time when Dallas beat New England lost that game to fall to 2-4. Hardly an impressive victory. If your best win of the year is against a team that was 2-4 at the time, I think that says you didn't beat a very good team either. This whole notion of, you didn't beat anybody. It's hard for teams to beat anybody because the whole league stinks. Green Bay, you look at Green Bay's wins this year. They beat the Saints, who didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Lions, who didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Bears, didn't make the playoffs. They beat Washington, who didn't make the playoffs. They beat Seattle, who didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Bears again. They didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Ravens. They didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Browns. They didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Vikings. That's 9 of their wins this year for Green Bay. 9 of their wins came against non-playoff teams. 9. So it's really hard to find a schedule for anybody that is winning a bunch of games. You look up and down teams that, hey, this team had a good season. They had a good season. Well, most of the teams are racking up wins against bad teams. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals, they won 10 games this year. They went to the playoffs, and they won a game. They beat the Vikings, didn't make the playoffs. They beat the Jags. They didn't make the playoffs. Detroit didn't make the playoffs. Baltimore didn't make the playoffs. Denver didn't make the playoffs. Baltimore again didn't make the playoffs. 6 of their 10 wins. Now, the other games that they won came against the Steelers. They beat the Steelers twice. So 8 of their 10 wins are against teams that either didn't make the playoffs or are already eliminated. Their best win of the season, they beat the Chiefs. All right, so they had a game against the Chiefs. Their losses this year, they lost to San Francisco. They lost to the Chargers. They lost to the Browns. They lost to the Packers. They lost to the Jets, for God's sakes. But the whole notion of they only beat bad teams. Everybody's only beating bad teams. Everybody, the stat that I threw out there the other day, 9 wins or less. 22 of 32 teams going into the final week of the season had 9 wins or less. And it ended up, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 teams ended up with 9 wins or less. 20 of the 32 teams ended up with 9 wins or less. So Philadelphia with 9 wins is closer to the upper echelon than they are the bottom half because 20 teams are in the bottom and they're one of the ones that have 9. That means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 teams had 10 or more wins. 3 of them came from the same division. LA, Arizona, and San Francisco had double-digit wins. The AFC South had 1 team with double-digit wins. The AFC North had 1 team with double-digit wins. The NFC East had 1 team. The North had 1 team. The South had 1 team. It's hard to have a good schedule when everybody stinks. 609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. This team has, I think, 2 really big questions. The quarterback situation. Because they have 3 first-round picks, they have to decide, are they going to use the draft capital to go get a better quarterback, or are they okay with the guy they have and build around him? That's their biggest question in the offseason. That's number 1. And then number 2, the second biggest thing they have to figure out is, what do they want to be defensively? Who is the guy on defense that they need to target? It could be in the draft. It could be in free agency. They have got to find their Micah Parsons. They have got to find their Aaron Donald. They have got to find their Jalen Ramsey, the guy that you can build your defense around. All right, we got this stud guy here. That means we could do this, this, and this. By the way, Jonathan Gannon will interview with the Broncos on Wednesday. That's his second head coaching interview. Breaking news within the last hour, John Gannon has another head coaching interview to go up to his 3rd head coaching interview. So John Gannon has 3 head coaching interviews. So either the fans know a lot more than NFL teams, or NFL teams think that you're not very smart. Because John Gannon has 3 head coaching interviews, and everybody wants this guy gone. It's a pretty fascinating dynamic. One thought every game coming up next. 5 o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, 31-15. Eagles are out. I think my score was 30-28. I thought the game would be a little bit more competitive. I thought Tampa Bay would win, but I thought the Eagles offense could score some more points. I thought the fact that they could run the ball would set up some play action opportunities, make the game close. My problem was I didn't think the defense was going to be able to get enough stops. They got 4 sacks. They forced Tampa to punt 7 times. So why are they home? Casey Joyner set to join us right now. One thought every game, a little deeper look at the Eagles and the Bucs, as of course the Bucs are advancing. Philadelphia gets knocked out in the game. And man, I said before, you sack Brady 4 times. They punted 7 times, Casey Joyner. How do you end up not even being competitive in that game?
Yeah, and not only that, think about it. Tom Brady on vertical passes. This is per True Media. Tom Brady's only attempted 5 vertical passes in that whole game. That's not much. You usually get a lot more than that. And he completed 4 for 87 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, it was damaging when he did it, but they took away vertical passing. Frankly, the running game wasn't that powerful, I thought, or at least it wasn't dominant for the Bucs. I mean, 31 rushes, 106 yards. That's not very good. So I thought defensively, yeah, they did hold up better than probably people thought they would. But this is Tom Brady, and he will figure out a way to put up points eventually.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at, they come out of the gates, they drive down the field, they get that touchdown. Philadelphia really struggled offensively, Casey. What did Tampa do that maybe surprised Philadelphia? Because it didn't seem they were ready to make the adjustments to what Tampa brought them defensively.
I think they realized. I got the sense they realized that, hey, Hurts isn't going to be a running threat. Which I think teams knew that before, and I know Hurts. He had 8 rushes for 39 yards, and he led the team both categories. But I think the Bucs basically said, we just don't think you're going to be able to run the football, and we're going to sit back and we're going to align ourselves to take away the run, and we're going to make you throw. I think they tried to do that schematically, and then of course game flow also caused that to be the case. But I mean, this is the 3rd lowest rushing total that the Eagles had all year, and their lowest since was it week 5, I believe it was. So I mean, I think the Bucs decided we're going to make Jalen Hurts beat us with his arm, and frankly, he wasn't up to it. But again, when you think of his injury, that's I think Tampa Bay probably took that into account too.
Right. Let's take a look at the game Hurts played, because they dared him to beat him, and it was obvious that he wasn't up for the task. Do you look at that game and say the Eagles have some major questions with what they want to do with Jalen Hurts?
If this was Jalen Hurts at full strength, yeah, I mean, I have a big problem with it, but it's obvious that Hurts is banged up. I mean, it's becoming clearer now post game and such. I think he walked out with a walking boot and such. So I mean, it's just a pretty significant injury. So what I've got to do if I'm the Eagles is, okay, look, the Ravens have won a lot with a run centric quarterback, and the Eagles can do that same approach. They've got the best offensive line coach league. It's still a great offensive line talent. Can't replace Kelsey, but still, they're got a great offensive line talent. They've got a crew of really good running backs. They can add some passing game elements. I just don't want to see games where he's running the ball 12 to 15 times, because this will happen every year. I think you have to find a way to do some alternate things in there, but I still don't have a problem with Hurts. You're just going to have to commit to being that run-centric offense. But if they change from Hurts, they have to change the entire system, and I think that's a recipe for failure if you keep doing that.
Were there plays to be made in the pass game?
When you're 4 of 19 on vertical passes for 90 yards, a 24.9 passer rating, and only 4.7 yards per attempt, and no touchdowns and an interception, yeah, you probably that was a problem if you're missing 15 vertical passes. I think there were some plays to be made in the passing game. Tampa doesn't have great cornerbacks right now. Their cornerbacks have been solid since they returned from injury, but not great. And I think they were there, but this Eagles team, even if Hurts is fully healthy, I just don't know that they have the aerial elements to be able to do that. Because beyond what they did with Goddard, and they got Goddard involved, such and 12 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards. Beyond what they did with them, I really don't think that they did much in their passing game. I don't like how they didn't get Smith involved enough either.
Talk with Casey Joyner. Yeah, you talk about Smith. There's the play. Late in the second quarter, they're about to go to halftime. I think it was like 50 seconds left. This defender falls down What happened on that play where Hurts gets intercepted in the end zone? Because Smith is open. Why was the throw picked off?
I'm still going to come back to. I just think that Hurts is not at full strength. I think that is a big part of the problem. I think that's a big part of why a lot of his passes off. You just look at his mechanics all game long, not just on that play, but all game long. I think his mechanics were shaky at best. And that's the thing. I don't want to make an excuse for it, but people are so unhappy with what happened with Hurts and so unhappy. At least that's the sense I'm getting off Twitter, which may not be the best place to go, but getting a sense off Twitter, everybody's really, oh my God, Fire Howie was trending on Twitter, on my Twitter feed multiple times in the last couple of days. I'm like, why? I mean, they just made the playoffs. Yeah, they lost to Tampa, the defending champions on the road. You got a banged up quarterback. You got a team that, is going to be hard pressed to beat these guys. I mean, it's Tom Brady at home. I mean, there's a lot of negatives going for it. And yeah, it was a blowout early and such, but your team got about as far as it could. And they've got a pretty bright future if they keep going down this path. So I just don't understand all the frustrations about where the Eagles are. Because again, I'm looking at this season going, I don't view this season at all as a failure, especially where they were 7 games into the year.
Oh, no, there's no question. I tried to explain earlier, Casey. You go from 4 wins to 9 and make the playoffs. Well, then there's a lot of retort of, well, they didn't beat a team with a winning record, so that kind of taints where they really are. Is that accurate? I mean, do you look around and say, look, they really didn't have their best win? I thought was at Denver.
Bill James used to say that the mark of a great team is that it will dominate teams that are a lot worse than it, and you only could beat them in close games. Look, the Eagles had teams on their schedule that weren't very good, but go ask the Giants. What is it? Bill James also said one time. Somebody said, "Well, this one team is they're tired of winning. They always win these 4-3 games, and it's like, or always lose these 4-3 games." He's like, "Yeah, you complain when they lose the 4-3 games. You don't complain when they win the games 3-2." He said, "Yeah, you don't complain when they win by a run. You only complain when they lose." I think if you're beating these teams, you're beating these weak teams, and you're going toe to toe with these weak teams. It's a concern. I'm more concerned about not where Philly is about beating bad teams, because that's a good sign if you give it bad teams. You should be able to do that if you got their talent level. What I don't like is that where they are against the Dallases of the world and against the better teams, they do have big steps to come up. But you're at this level. You're at a level above average. You're maybe number 15, number 14, number 13 team in the league. You're closer to 10 than you are to 20, let's say. And I don't think it's time for people to lose their cool about it, because this is a good place to be and a team you can build with.
John Gannon has 3 head coaching interviews. One with Denver on Wednesday. He just got requested by Houston and also Minnesota. Of course, the fans here want him gone yesterday. They also wanted Jim Schwartz gone yesterday as well. They got their wish there. They replaced Schwartz. Now they want this guy gone. What kind of job did you think that John Gannon did? Because the dynamics of what we're talking about here, Casey, against the bad teams, Trevor Siemian, Jake Fromm, Garrett Gilbert, they thrived. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, it didn't go so well for his defense.
I see Gannon getting interviewed after one season for head coaching jobs, and think back to Mike Tomlin for the Steelers. He had a year as a defensive coordinator, and it was okay. He did the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, what, about 16 years ago now, and he was okay. It wasn't a great year, it wasn't a terrible year, it was a solid year. But they looked at his leadership skills and said, hey, because when you're looking at a head coach, you're looking at a different skill set you are looking at coordinator. If Gannon has that type of leadership skill, if a team says, hey, that's who he is, I can understand why they want him to be that. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm looking at going, he took a team that was playing a particular style of defense. He wanted to play a different type of defense. He got them to play that type of defense. They played really well in coverage and really well against the run for a lot of times this year. By the way, Tampa has scored 30 or more, 28 or more points in 6 of the past 7 games. It's not as if Gannon is the only defense that they're doing it against. This isn't Tomlin giving up 40 in 3 straight playoff games. This is an entirely different situation. So I look at it this way. I'll give one other thing. I had a personnel person in the NFL years ago tell me that if you as a personnel director start to react to the game like fans, pretty soon you'll be one. And I think the Eagles need to look at this situation and go, well, you know what? Gannon did a good job. Let's look at it from that perspective. Not that, hey, we were hoping we can go far in the playoffs and take it at that level, because this defense made some big strides late in the year.
But I just don't. I mean, look, did I think Gannon did a great job? No. I mean, I'm not sitting here telling you the guy's the next, Wade Phillips coming up with great schemes, leading teams to Super Bowls. But Give me a guy defensively that you want to build a defense around. They just don't have enough. They've got a lot of good players. They just don't have any great players on defense. They got a bunch of guys who are, hey, that guy's good. He's average. He's good. They just don't have a great player. So how is the defensive coordinator supposed to put a great defense out there when they don't have a great player?
Yeah, it's true. Look at let's forget yesterday for a second, but look at Dallas. You've got Diggs in the secondary who can make a ton of interceptions. Jay Patton coverage makes a ton of interceptions. You've got a Micah Parsons. You've got players like that. You've got these impact players that can make a huge difference in your game. Look at Nick Bosa, what he was doing for San Francisco yesterday until he got hurt. Look at those sorts of players. Yeah, those players are hard to come by. And as a defense, if defense coordinator, if you can make the offenses have to go a lot down the field a lot and such, and do a lot of things the Eagles did well until yesterday, I'm okay with that. And plus, none of that. Look, we talked about coming into this game that Tom Brady was really good in the red zone, just fantastic in the red zone. And most defenses can't find a way to stop him, and Gannon didn't either. So it doesn't make him a lot different than a lot of other coordinators because most teams have trouble doing this, even the best coordinators.
One thought every game. That's Casey Joyner on the Eagles. We'll talk more about the games on Friday because there is a game tonight. We'll preview that with Casey. Let's go back to Saturday. My biggest thought of the weekend, Casey, all right? My number one takeaway from the entire weekend. This Bengals team is going to be pretty good for a while. That's my thought. I didn't buy into them all year long. I ripped them for not drafting a lineman. But Chase is so good that they now have him and the line held up, and now they can build that line. This team's going to be good.
They've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. When you've got Burrow, I worry about it though because the Bengals. I want to see you see organizations wanting to go on the cheap. I guess I'll just come out and say it that I think the Bengals sometimes try to do that. I worry about that for his future because you don't want him to not have as much success as other teams because they won't hire a coach here, they won't do analytics here, they won't just do certain things. But I mean, when you look at his talent level with him and Chase, and you look at Mixon, and they've got other great receivers too. I mean, they've got Higgins, they've got Boyd, who's almost not a terrible tight end. He's a solid probably top 10 tight end or close to. And they've got a lot of really good talent on that club. Losing Ogunjobi, that defensive lineman, he was third on the team in sacks and one of their best run stuffers. That's going to hurt him next week because he's one of their best guys in the middle. But this is a team long term. Yeah, I think this is not going to be the last playoff when we get out of these guys.
Yeah, I was very impressed there. And obviously, Burrow is here to stay for a while. He's one of the reasons, realistically, the officiating of that game was so bad. It was really hard to get in any sort of rhythm of the game. I mean, how much did that really taint that game?
It does. I mean, when you've got this many people understand it, you hear the whistle, and yeah, I get the league says we can't do anything about it. We can't make this a reviewable play because where the whistle came from. You can't tell if it's a fan in the stands that blew a whistle. You don't know this,
right?
But it's obvious based on the way the players were reacting that was a blown whistle. And when you have that sort of thing, I just keep coming back to, I think it was Jimmy Johnson that said it though. He would tell his teams beforehand, expect that we're going to get a bad call in this game. We have to be good enough to beat that bad call. And the Bengals were, and the Raiders weren't.
All right, so 26-19, Bengals will play Tennessee next weekend. Buffalo just Rochambeau's New England. I mean, this game was never competitive at all. Probably the biggest surprise of the weekend is just how not competitive that game was.
Yeah, it's that New England didn't have any sort of. It's not even a schematic answer. You just got outplayed incredibly. I think the Bills, emotion's a big thing in pro football, obviously, and teams need to be professional and they need to be play at a certain level, blah blah blah. But really, it comes down to a lot of it is emotion. And the Bills were so mad at the Patriots. I think for that wind loss they had in the Gale game and such. I think they said we're going to take this out of you guys. I think they were that fired up. I frankly think the Wingate too. They looked even coming into that contest. I think late in the year you could see that they were kind of tired. That they'd finally run out of gas, and the Bills have it. And those things converged in a historic loss. I think it's the first game in NFL history where a team didn't punt, didn't kick a field goal, didn't have a turnover in a contest. First time in NFL history that's happened.
Crazy. We'll see what's next for the Patriots. Obviously, they feel like they have their quarterback. They've got a lot of answers, though, after a 47-17 loss to Buffalo. Let's go to Sunday. All right, Dallas loses again. I'm not surprised. I picked San Francisco, and my reason was McCarthy. I just think McCarthy's just terrible. I just think he's terrible, to be honest with you. He doesn't do anything but manage the game, and he doesn't even he doesn't call plays. I don't understand how they are so undisciplined. And that game, the Dallas fans will say 14 penalties. I would say, if you want to tell me 12 of the 14 are justified, right?
Right.
I mean, the penalties were penalties because they were penalties.
Yeah, if you've got a flag happy crew, it's one thing. If you've got the Raiders crew, the Raiders Bengals crew that's just not doing their job well, that's one thing. But if you're not playing well, if you jump off sides, what do you expect the ref not to throw the flag?
Right.
If you're not doing, and plus, hey, mind you, hey, San Francisco on that 4th and 1 sneak, the lineman goes over there and doesn't quite get set. They called it a false start when it's actually illegal motion, but still, I mean, they called it on San Francisco too when they made mistakes. So San Francisco, hey, it was looking like Shanahan was going to have another choke game there too, which was concerning because that's when you talked about McCarthy. I agree. Hey, he's bad, and Shanahan's a great play call, but he doesn't know how to finish out games either. And but I mean, that last play was just head scratching.
It really was. But everything leading up to that, I liked San Francisco because they don't like McCarthy, number one. So I thought the team would just not be prepared enough. But there's just so much more than that this team can't get out of its own way. And the fact of the matter is, this is a team now. You signed Dak Prescott to that contract. You're going to have a real tough time building. This was their year.
Yeah, you could see Jerry Jones after the game in the press conference that he had. He said he's never been more disappointed in a loss. He's never, and that's saying something because they've had some pretty disappointing losses, but he's never been this disappointed with a loss that he can remember. And I just look at CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb got 3 targets and 1 catch. And it's not like San Francisco has these great corners. They're solid at corner now, or at least they had some improvements and things, but they had some coverage weaknesses. You can't find a way to get him, your biggest playmaker, involved more than that. And I mean, it's one thing if they make a defensive play call or defensive, coverage adjustments early on and say, okay, we're going to take him away in this sense. Fine. You got to have a counterpunch. And they didn't. And that's scary for them because, again, This was supposed to be the year, and that's one of their best players, and got nothing.
They've got their $14 million over the cap. They've got free agents that are going to have to walk because they're not going to be able to re-sign them. And you got $40 million into your quarterback and an aging offensive line. And your coach is coming back, it looks like.
Yeah, and your coordinator might not. Your offensive coordinator, who's again, mind you, Kellen Moore makes that call, reportedly makes that call, and he's the one who said, "Let's do that," and it's okay. And McCarthy signed off on it, and I get it. They didn't do it properly, but still, he's real creative play caller. Maybe he needs more time, but he may go somewhere else. Dan Quinn may go somewhere else. You may be missing coordinators, so you got to make some big changes there too. And if they lose their coordinator, that I think the offense takes a step back. And again, that window that's there, every time you lose those players or you got salary cap issue, lose a coach, that window starts to close.
Oh, and again, this goes back to Seattle won a championship with Russell Wilson before they paid him. Once they paid him, the Super Bowls went away and they became a playoff level team. This year, not a playoff. When you pay that quarterback, you better be sure. And right now, for what he's getting paid, he is going to hamstring that team.
Yeah, he's a bit banged up. He's not showing enough durability, and that's one. There's a reason Brett Favre stayed out there and played no matter what the injury was, because he knew I don't want anybody questioning that I can do this. Don't want my teammates question, but he's got some durability issues. As a question mark. He's getting injured often. That's where we say that's a problem. And you're right. There's certain quarterbacks. Hey, you pay Aaron Rodgers, you're still getting Aaron Rodgers' performance. You pay Patrick Mahomes, you're still getting Patrick Mahomes' performance. You're paying Dak, and it's just not quite there. Again, he's not been the same since the ankle injury. Let's give him some benefit of the doubt there too. But having said that, his second half of the year is not the same since he had the injury. Okay, well, quarterbacks get hurt, and you're supposed to be able to play with them. And Aaron Rodgers has had injuries, and he's done better he's done well. And so have other quarterbacks. Mahomes has played through injuries. I mean, other quarterbacks have done it, so he's got to be able to do it. And so far, Dak has not quite shown that he can.
One thought every game: Chiefs 42-21 over the Steelers. I mean, obviously the Steelers. This is where I tweeted this out. The 7 seeds are becoming the 16 versus the 1 in the NCAA tournament. It just shows the vast disparity between 7 and 2.
And the Steelers, hey, look, they went toe-to-toe for a quarter. and then they got the Watt return for a touchdown, and it's all right. There's a shot here. There's a chance maybe they can keep this going, and their defense just collapsed. The Steelers have now allowed 40 points in 3 straight playoff games. First time in NFL history that's ever happened. And the Athletic posted something on their NFL Twitter feed, said that Tomlin, he's the first coach in NFL history of 15 straight winning seasons. So I mean that's a huge plus. But he's also, what is it? He's had 4 playoff wins, 4 years with a playoff win during that span, and he's only had a couple one playoff win. So it's 2014, 2016 are the last 2 years that he has a playoff win, and one of those was against a really limited Miami team. So basically, since 2000, that Super Bowl that they lost to Green Bay, they basically haven't done a heck of a lot, even though they had a bunch of winning seasons and some playoff bursts. They don't get anywhere in the postseason, and it's something that if you're the Steelers, it's the standard. Is the standard just to get a winning season and be one and done, or are you trying to get farther? Because right now you got a question if you can get there with
They got a big
Tomlin.
question at quarter. They have not been able to find a replacement for Ben. That's one of the reasons why he's
Yeah.
still there, is they've never been able to groom a guy to get him out of there.
Nope. And mind you, hey, look, they got him. But remember what they did when Bradshaw leaves? I'm going way back now. Bradshaw goes, and between Bradshaw until you get Roethlisberger, they were a competitive team. They made the playoffs a lot. You got guys like Bubby Brister. You got guys like Mark Malone. You've got these mediocre quarterbacks and a power football team around them. They don't have a power football team right now. They can't power run the ball well at all, and the defense got run on all year. So now, if you had mediocre quarterback play, you can make up mediocre quarterback play if you're playing if you have that type of offense. If you're like San Francisco, you could put a mediocre quarterback there and still probably get 7 wins and maybe 8 or 9 if you get decent quarterback play. But you can't do that with Pittsburgh's playing. They've got to figure something out, because if they don't get an elite quarterback, find one in the draft or a trade or something, then that formula is going away, and they're going to be a bad team quick.
One thought every game tonight. You got Arizona, the Rams. Arizona's banged up. LA's banged up at safety. You got no Hopkins on the other side for offense. Murray's first game. Stafford's got a lot of questions around him. This one's setting up for an interesting one.
It is. JJ Watt's returning too, so that's who knows how many plays he'll play. But if he's anywhere near what he was, even if you get him for 30 plays, that's fine. The Rams, yeah, I mean, bringing a safety out of retirement. You're bringing Eric Weddle out of retirement
2
to
years
play.
out of retirement.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. And they've got talent in their secondary, so maybe they could have some guys. But you can't just ask a nickel corner or an outside corner. You can't just say, "Hey, go ahead and play safety." I mean, it's possible, but there's a lot of different reads you're making at safety than you're making at corner. In fact, I think Jalen Ramsey is now the defensive play caller for the Rams, which I would think that's pretty unusual to have your cornerback do that. You usually have somebody in the front seven do it, or you'll have a safety do it. So they've got some issues there. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rams give up some big plays. I just worry about the Cardinals defense. So the Cardinals defense, the last 4 weeks of the season, they are 28th in points allowed per drive per true media. I think the Rams get enough points, and Arizona can't keep up in a shootout.
Casey Joyner from The Athletic. He'll be back on Friday as we'll look at the divisional round here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Casey, enjoy the playoff game tonight.
Appreciate it, man.
Take care. Casey Joyner, everybody, here on the Sports Bash. One thought every game. We bring it to you exclusively on the Sports Bash. Thank you to Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE. Coming up, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, with all the head coaching news, the latest on John Gannon, where he could land. He just got another interview request. It's 3 interview requests now for John Gannon. Believe it or not, there are teams out there that like John Gannon more than you do. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Watch the show live video on our YouTube channel. Just launch the YouTube app on your phone, your smartphone, tablet, laptop, or your smart TV. When we come back, Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports, their NFL writer, joins me right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. 5:30 on a Monday evening on the day after the Eagles lose to the Buccaneers 31-15. The Eagles season comes to a close. A lot of questions. What's next? Jalen Hurts' future, I think, will be at the top of the question list. All that and more. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, set to join us right now as we take a look at what happens to this Eagles team now moving forward. But some of the disappointment from yesterday. I'm not disappointed they lost the game. I figured they'd lose the game. Just disappointed they weren't very competitive in the game. Why weren't they competitive? We'll get into that and more right now. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. He's their NFL writer, and he joins us right now here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Jeff, what's going on, man?
You know what, Mike? I'm like you. I think I'm disappointed in the way they played more than disappointed in the actual result. I thought they'd give them a much better game. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in Jalen Hurts. I thought he played better. The running game, I'm really disappointed in Nick Sirianni. I thought the running game was non-existent, and he tried to go to it. It obviously didn't work out for him. It was just, I don't know, Mike. I just feel like they were outclassed in all three phases of the game.
I wrote the exact same thing. They got outclassed, outcoached in all three phases of the game. Let's start on Nick Sirianni's offense. Tampa's stacking the box. They're putting 9 in the box. They're daring Hurts to beat them. And, are you looking at it and saying, hey, Hurts just wasn't up for the task, or do you put more of the blame on Nick Sirianni?
Well, I tweeted during the game, and this is before they actually started throwing the ball. I'm like, it'd be nice to see if the Eagles would let their quarterback throw the ball a little bit. And, they weren't doing that early. They were sticking with the run game. And I'm fine with that. But I was one of those people, it's the playoffs. I know your bread and butter to get you there was the run, and I respect that. But I feel like you got to unleash your quarterback a little bit. And they just didn't do a good job of that. Jalen Hurts was late on a lot of throws. Dallas Goedert had that crucial drop. They didn't target Devonta Smith enough. And honestly, Mike, it was the problem that the Eagles had all year long. And we talked about this and we complained about this. One, what's going to happen when they're going to be trailing by double digits, which happened early. And two, the Eagles just don't have enough weapons up this quarterback out. And you saw the result.
That's a good point to bring up, is how do you evaluate Hurts with the weapons they have in this offense? Now, they really run-centric the offense. Is that more telling of what they think of Hurts, or is that more telling of what they think of the weapons?
It could be a combination of both, honestly. And look, I don't have a problem with Jalen Hurts throwing 15 to 25 times a game if you're winning. But when you look at the result, you see how bad Jalen Reagor is. That's their number 2 receiver. Quez Watkins should be their 2. And at the end of the year, he was. But still, Quez Watkins is your 2? Really? Like, Jalen Reagor was supposed to be your number 2 receiver going into training camp. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You saw what he did in week 18, Mike. He couldn't do anything. He hasn't done anything since he's been here. This is what you got. It's Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, and you didn't target one of them. It's how can you evaluate a quarterback fairly, or how can you say the Eagles need to upgrade the quarterback position when you have no receivers? Nothing.
Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, they had their limitations. 17 yards in the first quarter, no points in the first half. They had a couple shots to get in that game. Right before the half, they throw that interception. All right, they throw the interception, no points. You get the ball back. You go 3 and out. You force a punt, and then Reagor happens. I thought, Jeff, that was the moment that just deflated the whole game. That muff punt was they're done. They got no shot. If you field that punt, you get the ball at midfield down 17 with a chance to put points on the board again. You put 3 or 6 on the board, you're still hanging in that game. Their defense yesterday, look, for as much slack that Gannon gets, people are blasting these teams for interviewing him for head coaching jobs. He forced 7 punts and had 4 sacks yesterday. If I told you Tom Brady got sacked 4 times and they punted 7 times, you'd say they probably lost. No, they gave up 31 points. That muff punt just deflated, to me, the whole thing.
And, this is where, and I was talking to a couple of Tampa Bay writers I know, and I've been close with throughout the year. I'm like, why is the vibe at Tampa Bay really high right now? Look, you beat the team you should beat. I think Tampa Bay's really good. But it was more like Bruce Arians was just praising Tom Brady. And I'm like, yeah, Tom Brady played well, but, like you said, 7 punts, sacks 4 times. And yeah, it seems like they're very concerned about the offensive line issues and the offensive line depth. But you beat a team you're supposed to beat. You really think you're going to beat the Los Angeles Rams or the Arizona Cardinals with a depleted offensive line? And no, because those teams are going to score with you. And yeah, I agree with you. The Jalen Rager muff punt, it wasn't my turning point of the game. I thought the pick to the pick in the end zone was where Hurts just threw it too late. But the Jalen Rager punt, after he muffed that, I'm like, yeah, they're not going to win this game. They're not going to come back. They're not going to win this game. Tampa Bay did what good teams did, take advantage, scored a touchdown, 24-0. It was over. And it's a shame. Jalen Rager should have never been on the football field after that. He really shouldn't have been on the football field before that. But Greg Ward's banged up, and he obviously couldn't return punts. But you need to get someone back there. Boston Scott, anybody.
Yeah, I mean, he said after the game, yeah, well, Ward had back spasms. All right, well, this is the thing. At some point, you got to take the blame off Rager. He stinks. You can't keep telling him he stinks. You got to put the blame on the coach for continuing to put him out there. Look, I thought Sirianni did a good job this year, but these type of little things, putting Rager out there consistently, continuing to stick with him when you had other options, those are the things that worry you moving forward. Is he going to be too loyal to these guys? Is he going to stick with the high draft choices because of where they're drafted? Those are the kind of things that the good teams say, look, you're not performing, you're out.
Yeah, and that's what I learned a lot about Nick Sirianni yesterday. And I thought Nick Sirianni had one heck of a year. I mean, he was the only rookie head coach to make the playoffs. That you and I both thought they were going to win, 7, 8, 9 games anyway. But we said because of the defensive line. Well, the offensive line was great, and the defensive line sucked this year. There's no sugarcoating it. But Nick Sirianni got the most out of this group. But you're right. He was too loyal to guys, too loyal to Jalen Rager, too loyal. This defense was too loyal to Eric Wilson. Guys like that. And you got to realize these guys can't play. And look, the Eagles got to take the $10 million dead cap hit here. Get rid of this guy. He's not a good football player. He just isn't. And you got to find ways to move on from him. Mike, I'm begging people to be patient with Jalen Hurts and let this team upgrade this roster and let this team upgrade pass catchers. And if Jalen Hurts is the same next year, then you can tell me I told you so.
Oh, listen, I'm and we're going to have this conversation all offseason. They got the picks. There's going to be names that are every name that's available. They are going to be attached to because they have 3 picks. Not to mention, for the people who hate Howie Roseman, he does his due diligence. He makes every phone call. So if Deshaun Watson's available, yes, the Eagles are going to make that call. If Russell Wilson is available, yes, the Eagles are going to make that call. If Aaron freaking Rodgers is available, the Eagles will make that call. They're going to. So this offseason, if you get sick of hearing report, Eagles are interested in this guy, and you're like, they're interested in everybody. Yes, because Howie Roseman makes every single call. He leaves no stone unturned. He makes every call, and it's just going to be every week you're going to hear them. They're interested in this guy, that guy, this guy, because they have 3 picks. So Hurts is not going to be on solid ground really until they get to training camp if he makes it to the end line.
And you know what? I'll say 2 things here. One, the Eagles may have the most draft collateral here, but the New York Giants also have the 5th and 6th pick. So they can actually up the ante on Russell Wilson if they want to. And if they want to do that, feel free to. But again, you're right. The 3 first-round picks, just because they have that, and they have 4 picks in the top 51, plus they have a 2023 first-round pick they can use too if they want. The Eagles are going to be on every quarterback. Now, the second point is, this is what I got very upset about. And a couple of my colleagues at CBS I got a little upset with yesterday. They had the agenda lined up before this game. They got to consider other options besides Jalen Hurts before he even played big. And then right away, 5 minutes after the game's over, that's the first thing written. I'm like, to me, that's agenda-based. And I don't like that. Take time, evaluate what went wrong in this playoff game, which a lot of people don't do. They just look, Jalen Hurts played bad. Well, the wide receivers played bad. Dallas Goedert played bad. The offensive line played bad. The running backs played bad. The coaching was bad. The defense was bad. The special teams was bad. Everything was bad. But I agree with you. If you're going to get tired of hearing rumors, guess what? You're right, Mike. You got 3 first-round picks. Any quarterback that's available is there for the taking. And they can upgrade that position if they like to. And I'm not against them if they do, but I'm just begging people, please be patient with this one.
Right.
That's not right now.
I got a name that might be intriguing. and I'm not a fan of this guy at
Is it
all.
Derek Carr?
It's not Derek Carr. This is going the cheap route, but reclamation. Saying, hey, Mitch Trubisky's a free agent. We can get him at a discount. He was the number 2. You know how these coaches love to get their hands on, hey, he was the number 2 pick. I'm the coach who can get something out of him. I'm sure you can get him for a pretty discounted rate. And the interesting part is, like, you could trade. I'm sure Minshew has value. You trade Minshew, get a pick back in return, and say Trubisky, Hurts. You guys are going to battle for it. This way, you keep your quarterback costs down, and you might find a diamond in the rough.
And that's the other thing too. I think that's the perfect guy to bring in for a quarterback option. I think Gardner Minshew's fine to bring in for a quarterback.
There's your column for CBS, buddy.
Yeah, Mike, you already wrote it. 5 quarterbacks Eagles are considering 2022.
Right?
Yeah,
somebody asked me today, is there a free agent quarterback? And I was thinking, I said, you know what? I know Winston's available, but he has an ACL, so I would probably, because he was, the number 1 pick of the draft, and he was playing pretty well down in New Orleans. He's a guy who could push the ball down the field. And I said, you know what? I think Trubisky's actually available. And that's the kind of guy a team says, hey, let me get my hands on him. I don't know what he did in Buffalo this year. I don't think he played very much, but, he was in a bad situation in Chicago. Maybe somebody says, hey, I think I can get something out of him. I just something to throw out at you there, Kerr.
No, it is intriguing. I mean, and look, he's free. That's the best part about free agents. They're free. And you're right. It's not going to break the bank. It's, what did Buffalo sign for? Like $3 million for a year. Maybe Buffalo holds on to him. I don't know, but Josh Allen seems to never get hurt. So
yeah, I think you got $2 million in Buffalo.
Yeah, I know Chicago had to move on from him, but I mean, he was might have been their best.
Oh, he was terrible there. I'm not a big Trubisky guy, but he had some talent. There's no question about that. He had talent. I think he was just in a look. That offense down there had no weapons. They had nothing. They had a terrible offensive line. They had no run game. So who knows how much? What's that?
A moron coached him.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm saying he didn't have a lot of direction. They did win the division with him as the quarterback, by the way.
Yeah, they did, and they would have won a playoff game if it wasn't for a double doink.
Double doink. Real quick, I want to get to a couple quick points here. Dallas loses yesterday. Predictable. I'm telling you, Jeff, if I'm Jerry Jones, there's no other move I can make to improve this team. I got to get rid of that coach.
And he's going to keep him. Eagles fans should rejoice. It's going to be the same thing next year. They're going to win 11 games, 12 games, and they're going to lose in the playoffs because you're going to – look, what I got tired of hearing about with the Cowboys is, and I'm sure you did too, Mike, Super Bowl contender. That team is not a Super Bowl contender, not in the slightest.
I would say this, Jeff. Are they a Super Bowl contender? No. Why? Because the coach. Yep. That's why.
That's why.
Their roster is worthy of being in that conversation. I said, my buddy's a Cowboy fan, and I tell him all the time, yeah, you should be excited about this team. They have the best roster. But I'm being objective telling you, they have the best roster. They have the worst coach. And they don't want to hear that. They have the worst coach. They have the best roster. They have the worst. That's not me being. I'm telling you, they have the best roster.
Here's another problem they have. And it's shocked because I think he's very good. Dak Prescott.
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. You paid him to be Aaron Rodgers. You paid him to be Tom Brady.
And he's not.
And now you are hamstrung because that team is $14 million over the cap. You've now paid him, and you have free agents that you can't bring back because you paid him too much money. He better be Aaron Rodgers for that money. Otherwise, this team is going to be stuck in mediocrity or even worse for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and that's the problem. You're right. You're paying him to be Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, and he's not. He's Dak Prescott. He runs up the score against bad football teams. He pads the stats against bad football teams.
Hey, they put up 51 against the Eagles. I hope they're ecstatic about that.
Yeah, but what did he do against a pretty good defense in the 49ers or a pretty good defense in the Colts? That's why I got so mad when they were just raving about him. And I'm like, look, he's a good quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. But I still can't believe the guy in the booth knows about what you and I know. The umpire has to touch the ball, but the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys doesn't. And him basically condoning people throwing stuff at the refs, that is not leadership at all.
Yeah. By the way, Allen Robinson, free agent, had a big year with Trubisky 2019. Just throwing that out there.
Hey,
He
they
is a
could
free
get him
agent.
too. That'd be
He's
amazing.
a free agent wide receiver. Jeff Kerr, last point. All the games this weekend, your number one takeaway from Super Wildcard Weekend was what?
Boy, I thought this was going to be a different question here. I thought you were going to be like, "What game am I excited for?" We'll get to that in a second. But how about the Bills basically pitching a perfect game on offense against the Patriots, against the Bill Belichick coach defense, the number 2 ranked defense in points allowed, number 4 in yards allowed. They just kicked the crap out of them, Mike. That was poetry. I mean, the only time they really had negative plays is when they kneeled at the end of the game. That was beautiful.
All
What I saw.
right.
I couldn't believe it.
Well, by the way, no, Wednesday when you're back, we'll do games because there's a game tonight. We don't know all the games yet. We still got a game tonight to finish. My biggest takeaway: Cincinnati's going to be good for a long time.
Yeah, they are.
I gotta give it into them. I thought they'd lose this week because their offensive line stinks. Their line came to play. I give them credit. I was wrong about that. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, that team's going to be good for a while. I'll give it to them.
Yeah, they are. And you know what? That was a tough Raiders team they faced, but Joe Burrow was ready for the moment. That team is well coached and ready for the moment. You know, Zach Taylor is that guy. Do not let that record fool you. I think that guy knows how to coach.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. That's all the time we have. He's back on Wednesday. We'll look at all the matchups, see what game you're most excited for in the divisional round.
Spoil it now.
Plus, we'll start to look ahead to the draft and free agency and all that good stuff. Jeff will be here throughout the offseason, and you can follow him at Jeff Kerr, CBS, and check him out over at cbssports.com. All right, Jeff, take care, man.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Jeff Kerr here on the Sports Batch, back on Wednesday as we will take a look further at the Eagles offseason, all the playoff games, and everything you need to know for week 2, the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We will close out the show on the other side. Get you ready for game night tonight. Josh has Chris Franklin from NJ.com at 6:20. All right, get ready to wrap up a Monday show. Good to have you with me. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports, kind enough to join us as he does every Monday. We'll talk football with Jeff throughout the offseason. He's brought to you by EMT Solar and Roofing and Solar Guardian. Start your solar journey today. Learn more at espnsolar.com. So a lot of reaction today. The text board was very live, and we tried to fit in as many text messages as we could. 609-403-0973. Mike, dump McCarthy and bump up Quinn. Instant improvement in clock management and discipline, in my opinion. That's the only thing holding them back themselves. I can agree with that. I think I told my buddy's a Cowboys fan last night. No, he's a pretty rational Cowboys fan. I got to give him credit. He's not one of these Cowboys fans that, says the refs cost him every single game. He's pretty rational. So, although he disagrees with me about the coach somewhat, and we used to battle about Garrett, too. I said Garrett was an idiot. I mean, he was hard. Garrett was probably worse than McCarthy, to be honest with you. But McCarthy's really bad. I mean, basic football, anybody who knows basic football, McCarthy has no idea how to manage a game. He just has no clue of clock management, nothing. I said there's a lot of head coaches in this cycle that if Dallas can get their hands on them, I'd be worried. So Brian Flores is one of those guys. If Dallas can get Brian Flores, like a disciplinarian guy, he doesn't have to be an X and O guy. You get strong coordinators. People are going nuts about John Gannon because he's getting head coaching. It's not about him as the coordinator that they're excited about. It's him as a leader of men. The Cowboys need a leader of men because their men want to control the coach because the owner wants to get the accolades for the team's success. He doesn't want the coach to get the accolades. It happened with Jimmy Johnson. That's why he left. It happened with Bill Parcells. That's why Parcells said, I'm getting the heck out of here. And then every time after that, they've brought in these guys who just are weak. So I agree with this guy. You need a disciplinarian guy. He doesn't have to be a great X and O guy. He needs to be a great leader of men. We're back with plenty more tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. Have a great night, everybody.